Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is your host, Constant Taylor. Today, we have a very special guest on the show, and they're going to share some very exciting information with us in the relationship department. So, if you're looking to increase your personal and professional effectiveness, then you've come to the right place. Our special guest today is Dr. Stephanie Weiland Knarr. Dr. Stephanie has been speaking professionally for over 4 years, and the content that she primarily speaks on is repairing relationships, improving workplace culture, and marriage relationships. She's spoken both nationally and some internationally, and she's based out of Washington, D.C. Her latest book is called Relationship Repair for Couples. Dr. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we're glad to have you on the show. Now, I'd like to kick off the program by asking you if you can tell the listeners a little bit about the topics that you cover in your consulting and speaking business and how you help people improve relationships.
Definitely. I like to encourage people to have a customer service counter basically for all of their relationships. And most people don't think of it in this way, but in reality, when we resolve complaints, it builds loyalty and it creates a positive effect in our relationships, no matter which relationship we're talking about. So whether you're talking about a relationship at work with your coworkers or at home in a marriage relationship, or on a more macro level, the whole kind of workplace organization, the same principles actually apply that we use in our business life every day in customer service. Customer service representatives, when they do a good job, resolving a complaint that a disgruntled employee has, a disgruntled customer has, research shows that customer tends to be a loyal customer for life. And I want people to realize that the same can happen in their romantic personal relationships and also in their workplace relationships as well.
That's pretty powerful. Now, let's step back a minute. Can you tell the listeners how you actually came to focus on relationships? Where did you start in your career, and how did you end up focusing on relationship building and repairs?
Sure. So I became a counselor. I did my PhD in counseling and human services. And when I finished my doctorate, I decided that I wanted to focus on being a clinician. And so I started a private practice where I had two primary focuses. One became doing workplace consulting and being an EAP counselor, which is an acronym for Employee Assistance Program Counseling. So I ended up being in some larger organizations providing workplace consulting and counseling on relationships. And then in addition to that, I specialized in doing marriage and family relationship counseling. And so in both settings, I really became focused on helping people to reduce conflict and to work out their relationship problems.
Okay, so what are some of the common misconceptions about the services that you provide to your clients?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What are one or two popular misconceptions about the service that you provide to your clients?
So one of the popular misconceptions, I think, is that conflict resolution, is boring. I mean, I think when people hear the word conflict resolution, they're like, okay, first of all, it's about conflict, which isn't something most people find pleasant, understandably. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is like, a conflict resolution training or learning how to, resolve conflict, that doesn't sound too cool. And so I think that is, definitely a misconception, because the way I look at it is, we can have fun. I actually laugh a lot with my clients as we're working out problems, for one thing. And then, so the second thing is, you really, when you resolve conflict and work out problems, there really is such a good feeling that comes along with that. It really creates a lot of positivity and security when people know that they're in working with someone or living with someone who they can work out problems with.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, I think, if we could come up with a different word for conflict resolution so it doesn't have those negative misconceptions,
Right.
I wish we could do that. I definitely try to do that in my workshops and in my consulting and counseling practice.
Okay. Now, how do you actually help them, either real or perceived? What are 2 to 3 problems that you actually solve for them?
So, one of the problems that I solve for businesses, talk for a minute just about kind of the business culture, and then maybe we can discuss briefly how I help with kind of marriage relationships.
Sure.
But when I'm going into the workplace culture, one of the primary problems that I'm solving is basically all the time and the money that is spent on conflict. I mean, there's research that shows that American employees are wasting billions of dollars a year on time really being spent fighting with their coworkers, a lot of infighting on certain work teams. And then there's additional costs when problems don't get fixed between coworkers. Believe me, I hear about this in my counseling practice when I'm doing workplace counseling and consulting. People sometimes, quit their job as a result of not getting along with a coworker, not being able to work out a problem. That costs businesses thousands of, hundreds of thousands of dollars, smaller business, and then larger corporations that can cost millions and billions of dollars on turnover and lost work days and work hours.
So, what problems do you usually, in terms of conflicts, what are the conflicts that you usually typically find in the workplace, and how do you go about helping them resolve those issues?
Well, so there's a couple of things. One is that people struggle to resolve complaints, whether they're little complaints or big complaints. It's just something that people struggle with. A lot of people are scared to bring up a complaint or a concern. They may not have the assertiveness to do that, so they might not voice a problem until it kind of boils over, and then it can become a big problem very quickly. So I teach people how to bring up complaints properly, how to service their coworkers' complaints and concerns, and also I help businesses come up with sort of methods and be able to implement procedures for people being able to work out relationship problems with their coworkers informally. We want to have informal methods within a business organization or culture to work out those concerns. And the second thing, when I go into a business and do some diagnostic interviews to kind of figure out what the problems are, definitely looking at, is there 1 or 2 or 3 people who are stirring up conflict? There are definitely some personality types that can stir up conflict very readily. And, one person who stirs up a lot of problems can really cost the business a lot of money, sometimes without a manager really knowing what the source of the problem is. And so I like to go in and do those diagnoses and help companies figure out where their problems are so that we can fix them.
Do you work with any type of personality evaluations, assessments?
So sometimes, most businesses are familiar with the personality tests. I'm thinking of a couple off the top of my head, one being like the Myers-Briggs personality and type and so forth. In some cases, I will do a personality test or assessment on a certain employees or within a team, but I mostly do my assessments through interviews. I like to briefly interview different people within the organization. And usually from those interviews, I can kind of assess and figure out where the problems are lying and give recommendations for how a business team or a company can make some changes to improve how problems are being resolved.
Okay. What do you think is the main reason that a company or potentially a couple that you are certain that you can help decides not to use your services?
I'm sorry, what was I don't understand the question.
Yeah, I'll repeat it and I'll edit this so that it doesn't show up.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think is the main reason that a company or couple that you feel that you can help most likely decides not to utilize your services?
Well, so I think that sometimes people are really unaware of how their problems are getting started, and also they're unaware of how serious the problems are. So I think in some cases, if people sought help sooner, they could possibly, save their company a lot of money or keep people from quitting their jobs and save on that money from turnover. Or, you can kind of do a similar metaphor in a marriage, save a marriage from divorce. But I think sometimes people are kind of unaware that someone's just about to quit their job or just about to walk away from the marriage if they don't respond to certain complaints or concerns. And so I really like to kind of mitigate that by teaching people how important it is to constantly be aware of when someone's asserting or communicating a concern or a complaint, and how to resolve those complaints on a daily basis and concerns that just come up in any kind of a relationship, so that they can really prevent things from getting to that next level where someone completely walks away from their job or from their marriage.
Okay. Do you have a case study that you can think of where you were actually able to take a company that had conflicts in the workplace and were actually able to help them resolve those conflicts?
So one example I can think of, right off the bat was where I provided a diagnosis and then went in and did a actual workshop for a specific department that was having a lot of infighting. It was kind of radiating out through other departments and causing some stress to the whole organization. But that specific department, when we really looked at the whole company, was a source of a lot of conflict. And so I did a workshop within that with that work team. And then I also worked with the manager to identify a couple of employees that were stirring up a lot of the conflict, so that those employees could be, counseled on some of their behaviors and attitudes, so those could be changed. And the outcome was great. I mean, the outcome was after, the workshop, the employees were had resolved some of the problems through the workshop and through some of our discussions and some counseling that I provided. And then they also were taught some methods that they could use in the future. And I continued to follow up with the manager of that department in terms of how that was coming along, so that could make sure that the company was successful. And they did see very positive outcomes.
Okay. Now, have you ever had a situation on a personal relationship level where you are connecting, engaged with a couple, and you realize that, you know what, these two guys don't need to be together?
Oh, well, I mean, so yeah, sometimes that thought runs through my mind. I don't ever make those decisions for people. I feel like, that is a very personal decision that people need to make if they want to end a marriage or especially a committed long-term relationship. But in some cases, there are times where my clients themselves get to that point where they realize, the source of our conflict is really incompatibility, and we didn't see that before we, got married or, got together. But most couples, I am able to help them work through their problems and find resolutions for their concerns.
Okay, excellent. Now,
yeah,
with the last 60 seconds, I would like to ask you to convey one theme or concept to the audience where, as if they don't get anything else out of this message, this is what I would like to leave the listeners with. Could you do that?
Yes. So the thing that I would like to leave people with is that when we're working on a work team or we're married to someone, so often, people are very dependent on their marriage partner or their boss, their employer, for their survival and for their happiness, for their life satisfaction. And so I like people just to really think about how important it is to resolve the complaints of the people that they live and work with. It really creates a lot of security. And when it doesn't happen, people feel pretty helpless, and they don't have a lot of other options in many cases. They need that job or they need that marriage for the sake of their children and financially and so forth. And so it's just, it's really, really important, I think, that we do a better job providing customer service and service to all of the people that we're in relationships with.
Well, I personally believe that you provide an excellent and valuable service to both organizations and individuals. And I can think of several organizations that I dealt with where I'm like, wow, Dr. Stephanie sure could have helped out here. Now, if people are interested in getting in contact with you and learning more about the services that you provide and possibly utilizing your service, what's the best way for them to do that?
So, my contact information, of course, is on my website at www.drstephanie, STEPHANIE, online.com. So www.drstephanieonline.com, and my email is there, my phone number, and, I tend to be pretty prompt in my replies, and so I'd be happy to provide a diagnostic or assessment service for any couple or business.
Okay, excellent. Dr. Stephanie, I would like to thank you for coming on the show and sharing that very valuable information that you shared with our listeners. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate your time as well and the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.